Satan walks among us, in the sea of the unsuspecting, inspiring chaos in the streets and division among the people. He rules from the highest positions of government offices. He walks among the front lines in lands foreign and domestic, looking patriotism in the eye. And in places where we feel safe from the outside world, he dwells, bringing deceit and disorder in our daily lives.
Hi everybody, I'm Jeff.
And I'm Linda.
And welcome to Satan Walks Among Us. We have a little bit of a different setup here today.
We do.
So those of you who are watching the video portion of this on YouTube know that we now have a podcast.
Yes.
So you can listen on your way to work, on your way home from work. If you have that commute, we'll be with you.
Absolutely.
If you're at work and you have the type of job where you get bored easy and you have the ability to listen to something,
yes,
why not turn on Satan Walks Among Us and hear what we have to say?
Yeah.
It can't hurt. Well, if you're listening to the podcast, check out the video on YouTube. All right, Satan Walks Among Us. Now, today's topic, Linda, if you would, do the introductions, please.
The topic today is hatred, and for a very good reason. Because today we feel like the world is so filled with hatred, particularly in the United States, where we are focused upon things like the coronavirus and things like the politics of the modern era. We feel like it's a very important thing to bring about the idea of hatred, why it may be occurring nowadays, how to avoid that hatred, and how to bring a little bit of peace and love into your life.
Absolutely. And everyone that's going around hating each other because they stand on one side of the spectrum.
Yes.
Whether they're on the left or the right. It's because we've lost focus. We've lost focus of what's really important in our lives.
Absolutely.
And it's not any particular political figure, though a lot of our beliefs in politics are backed by religion and such. But we tend to get away from what would Jesus do?
Yes.
How would he react in the situation that we're in?
Absolutely.
And if we can come together and refocus, okay, let's get our focus off of politics, off of what's going on in the world today, and turn our focus on God.
Absolutely.
Turn our focus on Jesus, the ultimate sacrifice. Bring our attention to him, our praise to him, and seek him. And if we're seeking him, it doesn't matter what our political views are or what side of the spectrum we're on.
That's right.
It's something that we can come together over.
Absolutely.
This country, whether people see it one way or another, God is very well ingrained in everything that our founding fathers did here in this country.
Absolutely.
And ultimately it was him that brought them together. It was the trust in him, the faith in him, that made this such a perfect union, that made it such a great republic.
That's right.
Without God's grace, none of this would have happened.
Yes.
We wouldn't be where we are today. We wouldn't have all that we have
all
today.
That we have, yeah.
We don't owe it to men. We owe it to God, and to God watching over us, protecting our troops.
We do.
Through all the wars we've been in, from the Revolutionary War, through the Civil War, through both the World Wars, Vietnam, and all those in between that are too many to mention. The home front has been very, very helpful with prayers.
Right.
Praying for our soldiers.
That's absolutely right.
And I really believe that's what helped us to win these wars. And that's what helped us to come together as a country. When we were under attack, when our country was under attack, be it in any of these wars, 9/11, the country came together in prayer.
That's absolutely right. And let's not forget Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor is one of those times when I think our country was in a great turmoil. This was something so unexpected in our country right at that time, when nobody had really comprehended that this could happen in the United States. Even though it happened on an outlying area of the United States, it was not somewhere that people were very focused. It was still something that just sort of shocked people. And That was one of those things where warfare, and it was just the beginning. It really was. We did have the Civil War before that, but at the same time, the country itself had grown so greatly before we reached things like World War I and World War II, when there were so many more people in the country, and the people experiencing this were just shocked by it. Quite as shocked by things like the invasion of the Capitol that just happened recently. That was one of those things that really shocked the country. This was a place that was symbolic of freedom and of love for our country, and it was just sort of almost disgusting to some people to see this occur in our country. But there is really an underlying current that runs here. This is not just, and I've said this from the very beginning of the coronavirus, the very beginning of the whole turmoil with the politics of Trump and of everything. There's something more to this, and that's what upsets me, is that sometimes you feel instinctually like there's something more to what's occurring. You can't quite put your finger on it, can't quite understand exactly what it is that you're feeling, but yet there's something deeper. And that something deeper, I've come to discover, is a great battle that's occurring that people don't understand and people don't see and people don't realize. We are so focused as humans upon reality, and reality to us is what we see around us, what we experience with our five senses. But truthfully, in reality, that reality that we experience is only basically a third of what we understand, what we know as reality. You have to add in the factor of what is unseen. And what is unseen is this great battle that's going on around us, this battle between good and evil. People don't quite understand that that's occurring. They don't understand what influence that has on their lives. People are going out there and they're forming opinions and criticizing others and hating others, and they don't really understand that how much influence the devil, Satan, has upon people, and that his army has upon people. Because let's face it, Satan has a great army. These are the demons. These are the demons that are walking the earth. They're roaming around. Satan's not going to be anywhere seen. He's going to send his army out to do his bidding and to do the things that he wants done. And this is not just taking over towns like we talked about in the last episode with principalities. This is not just that. It's talking about taking over people's lives and invading people's lives, causing turmoil, causing hatred and chaos and things that people just think, oh, well, I'm having a run of bad luck, or, I've had a really crappy life. Like, things have just not turned out the way I expected them to. But you have to see what is unseen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And part of in seeing what's unseen is we have to look within ourselves.
Yes.
Whatever decisions we make, whatever we decide to do, we have to ask, what is driving us to do these things?
Right.
Right. Now, the people that attacked the Capitol, the people over the summer that have been rioting in the streets and everything, these people feel a certain way.
Yes.
And one thing, if you step back and ask yourself, why am I doing what I'm doing? Is it because of anger and hate? Okay.
Yes.
Anger and hate are not of God.
Right.
If you are making decisions and your actions are guided by anger and hate, then they are not of God.
Right.
So if you step back and look and say, let's compare this to the Bible. The Bible is unwavering. It's unchanging. It's the forever constant.
Yes.
It's what it always has been and what it always will be, the Word of God.
Right.
And if we look at that and we put that as a parallel to everything we do in our everyday lives,
yes,
the closer we will come to God and the closer we will come to each other as a country, as Americans. And you think about it, you say, well, look, Jeff, what happens if all the Christians come together? There's going to be people that don't believe the Bible.
Right.
There's going to be people that don't believe God, and there are people out there that hate this country.
Yes.
And they hate Christians.
Yes.
They really do.
They do.
What are they driven by? Hate.
Hatred.
They're driven by
Yeah.
hate. The reasons for that hate may be unknown,
Yeah.
at least to us,
Yeah.
but they have their reasons.
Right.
Now, if all the Christians, at least right now in America, the Christians are separated because of hatred for one another, because of their political views,
Right.
because of organizations that they're affiliated with, because of who they voted for. Christians are separated. If these Christians can come together and say, look, let's focus on the Bible, let's focus on God.
Right.
He will bring us together. If we are living our lives by the Bible, we are living our lives in fellowship with one another the way that we
Yes.
should be living our lives. And those that don't agree with it, those that are non-Christian, it's not that we put a line between us and them. It's that we show them what compassion is.
Right.
We show them what kindness and love is. We show them the fruits of the Spirit. These are fruits
Right.
that come to you as you come closer to God.
Yes.
You start to show these fruits of the Spirit, just like an apple tree sprouts, blossoms, and grows
Yeah.
apples. As we become closer with God, we go from being perhaps cold people to showing love and compassion, where someone can look at us and say, and I've had this happen to me where I was in Iraq, okay, and one of the first sergeant was out on one of our convoys, and he came up and he said, there's something about you. You have like this glow about you
Yeah.
that is not like a lot of people I see.
Yeah.
You don't show fear. You don't show concern. You just have this assurance. He said, you're a Christian, aren't you?
Really?
Yeah.
You recognized that right away.
He recognized it right away.
Wow. That's
And,
amazing.
And that's the thing with people that aren't saved. They need to see that in us. If they see
Yes.
us fighting amongst each other, if they say, hey, this person's a Christian and this person's a Christian, and they're hating each other because of
Yeah.
political views and affiliations and because of worldly classifications,
Yes.
that's not sending a good message to these people.
Right.
So as Christians, anyone who's a Christian, we need to come together as Christians, as Americans, and we need to demonstrate for those who aren't saved what a Christian life is.
Yes.
And we need to show that glow. We need to let that light shine out so that we don't even have to go and put a line between us.
Right.
Others will see it and they will seek it. They will say, how can I find that self-assurance?
Yes.
How can I find that comfort that this person seems to have?
Yes.
How can I too have that light?
Yeah.
It
And
will work.
It definitely will. And it's funny that you say that. I've had people say that to me before. One case in particular was a woman that I worked with, and she said, you are always smiling. It doesn't matter what happens here at work. You're always smiling. And there's something very special about you. And I've heard that all of my life. There's something very special about you. People that are not Christians, they actually can recognize that. They can see that difference in you and see that you have this light shining from you, and that it's not just in a smile, in the way that you approach people. There's something about you that makes you stand out from the rest of the people, especially people that are true Christians, as I call them. There are a lot of people today that call themselves Christians that are not necessarily following the Bible in the way that we believe that it should be followed. They're going to church every Sunday, but then throughout the rest of the week, they're, doing the devil's bidding. And they do so to be able to say to people on the outside world and in their social circles, hey, I'm a Christian, But that is one of the things that really shines in people that are Christians, that are true Christians. They see that glow. It's almost like they say, well, when you're pregnant, you're glowing. When you're Christian, you're glowing. When you walk around with this idea that nothing can affect you because God controls your life, and it doesn't matter about the politics, doesn't matter about the coronavirus. None of that stuff matters in the grand scheme of things. You don't have to fear. You don't have to walk around with hatred in your heart for people. You have a clear conscience, and you understand that God is guiding your every step. And also, in another thing that we said with the Bible, this is a very important thing today, like you say, coming together as Christians. I believe that Christians often are separated by denominations, and everybody has their own interpretation of the Bible. And it's very important in this day and age that we are in right now that those denominations drop their separation. They're from each other, that they understand that each separate denomination, if they believe in the Bible and they believe in God, the Bible is not one of those things that's very clear cut. Oftentimes, it doesn't state right flat out certain things. You have to kind of take one verse and you have to look at another separate part of the Bible to sort of understand exactly what they're talking about. And even something as simple as the Ten Commandments can be very convoluted, because there are 3 or 4 instances in the Bible where people actually mention commandments, and people interpret that, well, is there 10 commandments? Is there 20 commandments? None of that really matters in the grand scheme of things. In today's day and age, what matters is love. And you have to understand that this is one of the most penetrating, most profound, and significant ideas that was ever presented by the Bible and by God and by Jesus. Love for each other, because we're all God's children, right? Love for God, love for Jesus. That is really the underlying premise in what we need to understand today as Christians, and what the thing that is going to unite us as a people, and that is going to give us the strength to fight against these demonic forces that are really threatening to take over the world at this point. I mean, I believe, some people may not believe it, but I believe we're in the end times. We're at the very beginning of the end times.
Absolutely. And even though no one knows when that is, you've got to consider the big picture.
Yes.
Okay, if indeed this was and is a nation that was founded on the principles of God,
right,
you can bet the devil is going to be there, wanting to tear it apart. He wants to rip the very fabric of this country apart.
Absolutely.
We've often talked about witch trials that took place in Salem, and
yes.
people say, oh, that's so far out.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I'm sure there were innocent people that were convicted, but also consider it, okay, these people, these Puritans that are coming here to worship God
right.
the way they want to worship him, don't you think that the devil would have found his way onto that ship?
Absolutely.
And found his way into this new world?
Yes.
And tried to rip them apart? The Bible talks about witchcraft.
It does.
This stuff is real.
Yes.
And this hatred that got into this colony tore them apart. The devil was there since the beginning.
Absolutely.
Trying to keep this country from happening.
Yeah.
And every step of the way, he's been there trying to rip it apart, driving people by hate. Jesus, I don't believe, wanted denominations.
Yeah.
He wanted the church of God, a church of him, of his followers, that worshipped him and came together in his name. And these denominations, they really do separate us. There's no point on quarreling over little misinterpretations or interpretations.
Right.
Look at the Bible, read it, and literally, what does it say?
Yes.
That's all we need to know.
Yes.
And ultimately, there are some very key factors that we need to know in the Bible.
Right.
And if a church could come together and be open to having preachers read the Bible and teach the Bible,
yes,
as they see the verse and show you the verse right in front of you, you can leave that to your own interpretation. You can look at the verse, hear what the preacher's saying, and saying, does this line up, and agree or disagree.
Right.
But there's no reason to branch off into completely different denominations.
Right. Yes.
Because we can't step back and say, okay, this person may not be saying it exactly as it says here. I have the text in front of me. I have the teacher.
Yeah.
Right? Do they line up? No? Okay. He may not have been the best preacher. Right?
Right.
But that doesn't mean separate.
No, definitely
we need
not.
to come together. And all denominations aside, all political views aside, it's all about the Bible. It's all about Jesus. Okay, what did he do when people hated him?
Right.
They hated him. He was a hated figure.
Yes.
A lot of people loved him, and a lot of people saw the love. He put nothing but good out into the world. Historical facts right here. Jesus put nothing but good out into the world, but people hated him.
Yes.
Whether you believe or they believed he was the Messiah or not,
Yes.
he got nothing but torture for all the good that he did in the world.
He really did. Yes. He really did, and that's one of the things that we have to keep in mind too. That the Bible has taken a lot of punches in recent years. People will often say, well, the Bible is not accurate. The Bible has been interpreted so many times. It's true. It really is. The Bible started out in Aramaic, a form of Greek. It's been interpreted. It's been changed. It really has. There's been things that have been dropped out of the Bible, verses and chapters that have been dropped out. There are things that people have put together and focused upon, but we really have to believe as Christians that the Bible that God has basically had his hand in the interpretation of every version of this Bible. And even going back to the Greek, the original Greek, there are certain things like, like the word for death that are sort of can be interpreted two or three different ways. In one verse, they're talking about death in one way. In another verse, like when Paul was speaking, they're talking about death in the sense of dying in the form of baptism. And that's not a physical death as we know it nowadays. But there are so many things that have changed about the Bible. You just have to keep in mind that you said one time, and this really resonated with me, because I'd always question this myself, wondering what parts of the Bible were not necessarily accurate. But you said you'd rather get to the end of your life and speak to God and say, hey, I believe that this is true because you said it was true. Instead of saying, hey, you said this was true, but I decided that it was not true.
That's absolutely right. And just kind of piggybacking on that one thing, the Bible does refer to two deaths.
It does.
It refers to the physical death of the body and the spiritual death,
Right.
meaning the spirit going to hell.
Right.
So some people get confused over that. Now, the Bible itself, we're blessed in this day and age because we can see the original text and compare it to what has been put out there and see any misinterpretations. Now, the Bible alone, how it has survived through the ages, there were factions out there that were trying to destroy every single Bible and make sure this word did not survive. If you go and do research on how the Bible made it and is still in existence today,
it's an amazing thing.
It's amazing. It's only by the hand of God intervening. Now,
Absolutely.
one other thing that's interesting, too, when you talk about the interpretation of the Bible, King James, was quite a guy. He was not coming up with a Bible. A lot of people say, well, he interpreted the Bible and he put it out to do his will. He didn't. He put it out, long story short, there was a big war going on in his kingdom between different religious factions. So he figured if he was able to come out with an English version of the Bible and put this out into his kingdom would help bring the people together.
Right.
Kind of like what we need right now.
Absolutely.
So in the interpretation, for everything that was interpreted from the Bible, he had 15 different scholars look at each book separately and interpret it. And then they put it together to make sure everyone was the same. So there was very little room for error. And when they look at the Bible today, there were some words that were misinterpreted. But not one of those words was significant enough to change the meaning of any passage in the Bible.
Overall meaning.
That's right. So if you've grown up on the King James Version, you read it, that's the one I recommend. It's one of the hardest to understand, but at the same time, it's the one that I believe is closest to the original.
Right.
And there's very little. And now, like I said, in the way back when, even 100 years ago, they didn't really have, anything that they could look at both Bibles and say,
Right.
let's compare them. But now they do. Now they have people that study that and
absolutely.
everything else, and they
Yeah.
can see how close it is. Mm-hmm. So we have that. We do.
We certainly do. And if you can't get through the King James Version, there is something called the New King James Version, which I really like. It makes things a little more easier to understand. You kind of go through, it's got the same basic premise as the King James Version, but it makes it more easy to understand by the common man. And that's one of the reasons why I appreciate it and why I like it so much, because in the King James Version, it's much like reading Shakespeare. Everybody's forced to read Shakespeare in some sort of high school literature class. You go through it. Some people are like, hey, I don't understand what this means. But they're trying to focus too much upon what is each individual verse or each of an individual saying and each word. You have to sort of go and look at it as in an overall sense. And it's funny nowadays because, not funny like ha-ha, but funny crazy, weird, that people can find so many different interpretations of the Bible. Because really, if you take it somewhat literally, as literally as you possibly can, you can't go wrong. You really can't.
That's the problem, though. People won't take it literally. They'll say, what is he trying to write? Because we're so used to reading, literature nowadays that has an underlying meaning to it.
Right. That's right.
The Bible, I don't believe, has any kind of underlying meaning.
No.
It's straightforward. It tells us what it needs to know. God isn't trying to trick us. He wants this information out there, and he wants us to understand it.
He does.
Now, unfortunately, a lot of our society today, we want stuff that's very plainly written. Mm-hmm. And the King James Version of the Bible, it's really a work of art. The way these words come together and everything. And if you can bring yourself to read that, it would be awesome. Another version, though, that's I found pretty good is the New International Version. The NIV version of the Bible is fairly decent. But, meditate on it for a little bit.
Yes.
Pray with an open heart. When you read this Bible, what is God saying to me? God, what do you want me to know? What do you want me to take away from this? Read a little bit at a time. Before bed, go to sleep, and see how you wake up feeling. If you wake up with any new ideas, or if you feel different about what you read in the morning.
That's
that's what I used to do. I'd read it before I went to bed, and I'd read a little bit at a time. And reading one verse, you may not have a whole lot of understanding, but after reading the whole thing, I got the message.
Yes.
To say, I got the message.
Absolutely. And that's very important today, is that we understand God's word. The Bible is his word. This is the guiding light by which we live. Is everything that is written in the Bible is the way that we need to conform our lives. And, it's very difficult nowadays for people to understand everybody is against Christianity. Everybody is against God. Let's face it, God is a very critical, very judgmental God. God hates everybody sort of mentality nowadays with people. And it's just not true. The way people are raised nowadays, people are often raised to believe that they're somewhat coddled in a sense. They're raised to believe that you don't have to follow rules. You don't have to follow the law. You don't have to sort of conform to this understanding of any one person or one group of people. You kind of can do your own thing, and it's okay. Everybody's freedom, everybody's individual ideas are okay. But, just like any good father, and God really is our father. He's the one who created all of us. We are all of his children. We talked about this a few moments ago, that the fact that, God is one of those that's like a great father. Any great father is going to establish a set of rules for his children. He's going to reward the children that follow those rules. He's going to punish the children that don't. Okay? He has these rules. These rules are set forth in the Bible. And if you read the Bible and you understand the Bible, and I would say this is probably the only major significant point in the Old Testament of the Bible. If you don't read anything else in the Old Testament, the best thing to read is the Ten Commandments. You have to read the Ten Commandments. You can skip ahead over everything else, even the creation, even the major creation of Adam and Eve and things like that doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. You read that Ten Commandments, you find out what the moral confines, what God's rules are for his children. Then you go straight to the New Testament where it starts talking about Jesus and what he did on this earth and what he put forth under the new covenant, under the New Testament, because that is what's most important nowadays, because Jesus was one that only talked about love. He only talked about love for each other. Even the people that did not agree with him, even the people that would have been looked down upon by society, let's face it, like Mary Magdalene came, and she was one of these women of the night, and she was one who would have been looked down upon by others in the society, and yet because she showed her true colors, she showed, she came, she washed his feet with her tears and her hair. That was one that, he looked upon and said, hey, she's, everybody is worthy of my love. I'm going to love everybody. And, I might not necessarily like the way you live your life. I might not, you don't necessarily follow God's rules, but I'm still going to love you.
That's absolutely right. One other thing, though, I'd highlight in the Old Testament is in understanding our situation today is, of course, creation. If we already understand that God created everything, but Adam and Eve, the sin that brought man to where they are today,
right?
To what has brought us so far from God, and how we need to make up for that to come closer to God. Sin really infects us. It's an infection, and it's what allows these demons to come in and allows Satan to walk among us. Right. Podcast title right there.
Yeah.
So in this, one thing we can start in uniting our country is how we raise our kids. Okay. A lot of people are, they step back and they say, I just want my kids to form their own opinions and everything else.
Right.
I don't believe that. I believe that as parents, we're instructed by God to instill morals and values in our children. The Bible's very clear on child rearing. And if we don't teach them about God and we don't teach them about the Word of God, no one will. They'll get out there in that world. They'll be unprepared for the world, and they'll be unprepared for where they're going to spend eternity.
That's exactly right.
But in talking about hate, some people will say, well, how can you say don't hate, yet you don't approve of this and this and that? There's a difference between hate, tolerance, and acceptance.
Yes.
Okay? And that's one thing that's clear to understand. Just because I don't agree with how somebody lives their life or what somebody does in their lives does not mean I hate them.
No.
I do tolerate them.
Yes.
But I don't accept it.
Yes.
I don't accept it. And there's a difference between not accepting and not and hating.
Right.
Okay? I don't hate anybody.
Yeah.
Now, if somebody is doing something that's against the Bible, I can recognize that as a Christian. And if they would like guidance, I could help them or offer them guidance. I'm not going to necessarily intervene where I'm not wanted. But at the same time, I'm not going to judge them. I'm not going to say this person is definitely going to hell, because only God knows their hearts.
Right.
Some of the people that we see as being the best people, and that person is going to heaven, we're judging them. They might very well be going to hell. And some of these people that seem miserable and seem like they're, it doesn't really seem like the person I want to be around. Maybe that person is right with God and is working on their situation, and when they pass away, they're going straight up to heaven.
That's right.
We don't know. But there is a difference, of course, like I said, between what we tolerate, between what we hate, and acceptance.
Right.
Okay, just because I don't accept something, if it's not of the Bible, I don't accept it. I don't accept it as being right. I don't accept it as being the way of God.
Yes.
But it doesn't mean I hate anybody that does those things or practices those things.
Right. Exactly. And I really truly believe that, and I felt this. I have a love for all mankind. And it doesn't matter who you are and what station of life you are and what situation you are, or how bad of a Christian or non-Christian you are, or how good of a Christian you are. I can find an equal amount of love for all these people because I know that they're all God's children, that we are all people that were created in His image. We are all people that are on this journey through life, this very, and let's face it, extremely difficult journey through through life, with being bound to a body and having all of these earthly influences and feeling all of these things that you wouldn't normally feel if you were, say, in heaven with God. Everybody is on this journey. And just because one person does not have the same belief as you, if you are the best Christian in the world and you see somebody out there on the street shooting up heroin, or you see somebody out there who is a woman of the night, let's remember exactly what Jesus thought and what Jesus did, and focus upon the good points of that person, and come to realize that everybody is sort of, I describe it, on a ladder. Okay, spiritually, there's this great ladder that leads up to heaven. And some people are higher on the ladder than others. It's all a learning experience. But that doesn't mean you hate the people that are lower on the ladder than you. It means that you look upon them, you try to help them up the ladder. You reach a hand down and you try to grasp that person, and you try to help them up further on the ladder as much as you possibly can. Because the idea and the great premise behind this is that you don't leave these people low on the ladder trying to figure out what life is about and what God is about, what the whole nature of living and of being is about. You help them. You reach down and tell them what you believe it's about. Give them the choice of walking a couple more rungs up on that ladder, a little bit closer to where you are. Everybody has different experiences. Everybody has different things that they experience through their lives. And that's why no one person's problems are worse than another's, because your whole premise behind it, your whole idea is that you're experiencing things differently. Everybody's life has been lived individually. So you look at this person, perhaps instead of hating, and the better thing would be pity, and trying to reach out to that person and help that person as much as you can to come further up the ladder so that they are closer to you and closer to God than they ever were before. Any little step towards Jesus and towards God is a step in the right direction.
That's absolutely right. And, if you think about it, that love for humanity, that compassion for others,
yes,
can cause one to be very saddened when they see somebody going down a wrong path, or see somebody making bad choices. But keep in mind too, there's a difference. Okay, if I'm walking, and not that I'm walking by quicksand or anything like that, but for an example, let's say there's somebody that's sinking in quicksand.
Yes,
I can reach out my hand and try to help them.
Right.
I can hold out a branch and try to get them to grab it. But if they don't grab that branch and they don't grab my hand,
yes,
I can't pull them out of that quicksand. I can stay there by the side of that, and I can try to talk them out of that, try to convince them to take this branch and take my hand.
Right.
But if they don't do it, I can't force them to.
Yes.
Now, on that same thing, all right, keep in mind, I'm not going to jump in that quicksand with them.
No.
Okay? So just because I don't surround myself with certain people doesn't mean I hate those people.
Yes.
I do care for those people, and I do want to see them change, and I do want to help them if they want to take my help. But at the same time, I don't necessarily want to be in the quicksand with them.
That's exactly right. Yes. You don't want to be in the quicksand with them. You don't want to lower yourself to the point where they're at. You want to make sure that you maintain your standing on that firm ground or up on the higher rung of the ladder, and not necessarily allowing yourself to lower yourself. But at the same time, it's very difficult as a Christian to be able to look and focus upward on where you're going, and to also focus downward and to help those that are in need. And you think of that as like, you're supposed to look down the ladder at people that are lower than you than trying to help them out. You're supposed to look up and focus upon God and upon Jesus and where you're ending up. But really focusing upon what's lower than you and the people that are down there on that ladder, desperate for someone to reach out and grasp their hand and help them up the ladder a little bit, actually makes you focus more upon what's above you than anything. It really does raise you up and make you closer to God by doing so.
That's right, because we call on that power from above to help us.
We do.
And what I'm referencing with the quicksand is basically, if there's somebody that's living a lifestyle you don't like, you can still care about that person, but you don't necessarily have to hang out with them.
Yes.
You don't have to hang out with people that live a certain lifestyle. You don't have to hang out with those that are of the world.
Right.
But when they're looking for help, give it to them.
Yes.
Give them
absolutely.
the help they're looking for.
Yes, and it's a sad thing nowadays because I've become somewhat of a loner. In a sense, all of my life I have been somewhat of a loner. But I was raised in a way that is very different than a lot of people are raised nowadays, and raised with different values and Christian values, and raised in a way that separated me as a person from others. And I've learned to separate myself from a lot of other people because the way people live their lives nowadays is not a way I want to live mine. I'm not going to jump down into the quicksand to help you out of it, because then we both may sink. And who's to benefit from that, right? But, in a sense, separating yourself completely is not actually helping those in the quicksand. You can't just turn your back on these people. You feel like you need to help them in some way, shape, or form. However you can, you've got to reach out and help these people. And that's exactly what we're doing. We're trying to find a way to reach out and help people. As a paranormal investigation group, we encounter a great many people who are in need, people who are in that quicksand, people who are sinking down to the bottom of the pit. And as good Christians, we look at these people, we have pity upon them. We really want to help them, just truly out of the kindness of our hearts. We want to reach out and try to grasp these people's hand and help them up. And that's what we're trying to do, even with this podcast and with this video that you may be watching right now. We're trying to reach down into that pit and grab somebody's hand and pull it back up, because we believe that everybody, if you just keep a little bit of an open mind, that's all you have to do. Even if you don't necessarily believe in Christianity and believe in God and all of that, you can believe whatever you want. But if you're willing to listen to us, then you may find a way to live a little bit of a better life than what you've been living. We certainly have problems. We have obstacles that come our way. We have what I call speed bumps in life. And these are the speed bumps that the devil throws under your path. And yet, if you have God in your life, you have this everlasting, all-knowing, all-being sort of entity there that he's going to help you over those speed bumps. He's going to show you a way that you can love everybody, despite your differences in the way you were raised, despite your differences in politics and anything else that may separate people nowadays. He's going to show you how to love people and how to bridge that gap that so many people have nowadays and come together and unify against Satan.
That's absolutely right. And that's what it's all about, unity in
Yes.
Christ. Don't be driven by hatred.
No.
Okay, no matter who you are, I don't think anyone of any religion or any faith, anyone in this world can say, hey, my decision was based on hate and it was a good decision.
Right.
Okay. But I want to thank you all for joining us for this edition of Satan Walks Among Us.
Yes.
Until next time, I'm Jeff.
And I'm Linda.
And we hope you all have a wonderful week.
Yes.
And we'll see you next week.
Yep. And don't forget to like and subscribe and keep an eye out for our next video, because it'll be Tuesday evenings, that we're posting videos.
Absolutely. And check that out on YouTube. If you're listening to us, you can
Yeah.
watch us. But you may prefer listening to us because I got a face for radio.
Yeah.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.